So many cooks in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen with ideas we're happy to share.
Welcome to So Many Potatoes. My name is Dylan Barman. I'm a cook in the kitchen. Welcome to So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. We have these programs every month. We've been doing them since near the beginning of the pandemic. And every other month we have so many kids in the kitchen. So the cooks in the kitchen, we're all Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Food for Life instructors. Food for Life is a nutrition education program where we have evidence-based classes to keep you healthy. And we have classes for those with diabetes or pre-diabetes to show you how to prevent, perhaps reverse diabetes. We have a class for cancer. We have a variety of classes to help you get back to good health if you aren't healthy. So we've been doing these shows every month, and we pick different topics. Can you believe we've never talked about potatoes? Potatoes are a common ingredient, but you know, at one point they weren't so common. They're a New World crop, and I'll tell you a fun story. I think it was in the 1800s where there was a food shortage in France, and the peasants were suffering. They weren't getting enough food, and the king of France had arranged to try this new vegetable called the potato. And people wouldn't have it. They were suspicious. And he was concerned. He said, these guys better eat these potatoes. And you know what autocrats can do? They can rule. And so he ruled, and he said, if you don't try the potato, your ears will be cut off. That's a story I read. Now, around the world, people enjoy potatoes, and I don't think anybody has to have a threat of having their ears cut off. Today, we have 9 cooks in the kitchen, and we're going to be highlighting the potato. 2 of us, including me, are going to be preparing potato salads in a very healthy fashion. I'm just going to read a couple other recipes. Gold potato and kale. I think that's my friend Karen who's going to be doing that. Hasselback potatoes. I think Carolyn is doing that. I don't know what Hasselback potatoes are, but I'll find out in a few minutes, like you will. Crockpot Pizza Potatoes. That sure sounds interesting. My friend Cody is making roasted garlic fingerlings. I love fingerling potatoes. There's all sorts of potatoes. In my potato recipe today, I'm going to be using Yukon Gold potatoes. Here's a red onion as well. But there's many kinds of potatoes. There's russets, reds, whites, yellows, purples, fingerlings, petite potatoes. Potatoes have a good source of fiber. A medium baked potato has about 3.5, 3.8 grams of fiber. We recommend in our classes aiming for 40 grams of fiber a day. I don't know about other countries. This show is shown around the world on the internet. But in the United States, most people get, I think it's 10 or 12 grams of fiber. But we recommend 40 grams of fiber. So one baked potato gives you almost 1/10 of what we recommend per day. Potatoes are good sources of vitamin C and B6, and a number of minerals like potassium, both manganese and magnesium, phosphorus, niacin, and folate. Now, I do want to mention that potatoes have small amounts of alkaloids, which for the vast majority of people is perfectly fine. In large quantities, alkaloids can be troublesome to the digestion. And there are some people, this isn't well-established research, there are some people who feel that nightshade vegetables, they're flowering plants, bell peppers, eggplants, tomato, potatoes, can cause inflammation. So if your healthcare provider suggests that you avoid nightshades, you may not want to make our potato dishes. I will say that plant-based eating is anti-inflammatory. And as the research comes along about nightshades, if nightshades do prove to promote inflammation, especially in certain people, then look at it holistically. If you do want to eat potatoes, follow what your healthcare provider says. But if you're eating a plant-based diet, you're getting so much, your food is so anti-inflammatory. But anyhow, make sure you follow what is right for you. When we cook potatoes, we divide them into starch. So high starch potatoes are things like russets or Idaho, and they're great for baking. How many of you guys have tried air frying? They're wonderful for air frying. I like to air fry with no oil. When you move to lower starch varieties, they're better for mashing or boiling. The lowest starch varieties hold up well with shape, and they're good to boil or roast. New potatoes and red potatoes fall in that category. I actually like medium starch potatoes for my potato salad because these do hold up well even when you boil them. And here I've boiled my potatoes and I've washed my hands so they're clean, and you can see that these have held up well. I've already cut them. So we're going to use Yukon Gold. It tastes really good. The recipe I'm going to be making is a German potato salad. Now, when you think potato salad, you might be thinking gobs of oil or mayonnaise or other foods. What I'm going to make is a no added fat potato salad. And I wanted to acknowledge my friend Susan at Fat Free Vegan, fatfreevegan.com. She's been publishing these recipes, I think, for 20 or 25 years. And they're great. There's a whole bunch of them. And they're vegan, whole food, plant-based, no added fat. I'm going to be making a recipe that serves 4, but you can modify this to your needs. All of our recipes are available online. You can download our recipe document. The link we'll post, it's bit.ly/so-many-potatoes recipes. You want to capitalize the M, the P, and the R. bit.ly/so-many-potatoes recipes. And that's where you can find my recipe as well as all the other ones. What I did is I started with 1.5 to 2 pounds, which ends up being 6 to 7 medium Yukon Gold potatoes like this. I rinsed them, and then I put them in boiling water with some salt. Do you know why we often boil with salt? It's not necessarily to salt the food, but if you've had chemistry, when you add salt, you get what's called boiling point elevation, and the water boils at a higher temperature and the food cooks better. So I've cooked this, and I cooked it some time ago, so I can touch the potatoes. Potato salad is best cold or at room temperature. Now, if you make this and you want to serve it soon, rinse it with some water, and that'll bring the temperature down. So here's my potatoes, and I'm going to simply add them to the bowl. This is a really easy recipe. So I'm going to add them to the bowl. I always kick the shows off, and I sometimes wonder if I don't make the simplest of recipes. You'll have to judge for yourself. I know we have some really cool sounding recipes coming up today. Okay? And notice, if this were a lower starch potato, you wouldn't get some of this flaking. But it's fine, there's not a lot of it, and it looks fine. We're going to be adding more ingredients. But if you want your potatoes to look nice and firm, then you want to use a lower starch potato, that like the small round ones that you won't have that breaking up. I'm going to be whisking in some vinegar. I'm not a vinegar fan. My parents are from India, and they didn't use vinegar in their cooking, and I generally don't like the flavor of vinegar. So this recipe, and I've modified this, the original recipe calls for more vinegar. I don't know if you're familiar with these glazes. So the glaze is nice in some salads. It really clings to the recipe. So for this recipe, I don't want to use a glaze. I want something which is more liquidy. So I'm going to be using this red wine vinegar. You could use a champagne vinegar if you want. If you want, you can use apple cider vinegar, but I recommend the red wine vinegar. So there goes 1 tablespoon and 2. I'll put just a little bit more. The way that Susan makes it has more vinegar, and many people like vinegar more than I do. I've made this for my family, and they've really enjoyed it the way I've cooked it. So there goes the vinegar. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of mustard. So any good mustard, like a good Dijon mustard or a stone ground mustard. And I also teach math. I don't know if you know. So here's the problem. Cooking often is problem solving. My tablespoon doesn't fit in. This isn't an official tablespoon either, but it's close enough. But my teaspoon does fit in. Does anybody know how many teaspoons is in a tablespoon? It turns out it's 3. we have this crazy system, and my teaspoon does fit in here. So I need, so all my math students, I hope you're paying attention, my third graders, how many, if 3 teaspoons is 1 tablespoon and I need 2 tablespoons, I need 3 times 2 or 6 teaspoons. So 1, 2, and you can tell I'm not being that careful, I'm not measuring exactly. 3, this is good enough. 4, 5, and 6. So there goes my 3 tablespoons of mustard. You can modify this recipe as you should to your taste. If you don't like mustard, add less. If you like mustard, add even more. Set this aside. And then I'm going to add some brown pepper. People who've watched me before know I'm a fan of pepper, but not in this dish. I like the freshly ground pepper. So do this to taste. I'm going to just grind so it looks good to me. But if you'd like, you can try maybe half a teaspoon or a third of a teaspoon. And then if I had some chives would go great. I don't have chives, but I am going to add salt. And again, please modify all these recipes to your palate. If your healthcare provider says don't eat salt because it elevates your blood pressure, then don't. I'll tell you what I think about salt for myself is for years I stopped using salt. I actually find salt really adds to flavor of foods that I cook. But the problem is processed foods tend to be high in sodium. If you're not eating a lot of processed foods, then adding a little bit of salt for me is fine. And so I'm going to use salt, and I'm going to use this salt and I'm going to grind. This salt is a smoked salt. It's more expensive. It's significantly more expensive. Smoked sea salt. I don't know if you can see that. And if you can see the grains of it, it's brown. It's smoked with, I think, maple wood, perhaps. And it has a nice flavor. So my notes I'm looking at say try half a teaspoon. So adjust this to your palate. And I'm not measuring, I'm guessing. If I'm wrong, I can change it. You know, if I add too little, I can always add more. Okay, so there's my smoked salt. It's a wonderful salt. Okay, and I'm almost done. All I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk this. If I had a whisk, I'd do that, but I could just mix it with my spoon. You could, if you want, add a little bit of maybe sage. Sage would go well with this. Maybe even a little bit of rosemary. So there's kind of my dressing. No mayonnaise, no oil. Okay, so I'm going to dump that in with the potatoes. Get rid of my bowl. And I'm just going to mix. I need to tell you about our immersions. So my friends Cody, Carolyn, and Susanna are also in the show. So we've been doing these immersions, and we invite you to the next one. It's coming up in a couple weeks at the beach of North Carolina. What we do is we share a lot of evidence-based information about plant-based eating, and then we cook. We show you how to make all these dishes. We have films in the evening on plant-based lifestyle and plant-based nutrition, and we talk about the appliances we use, cooking techniques. We have time off. The beach one is going to be great. We're right on the beach, so a couple hours to just relax, enjoy the beach. So join us. We'll put the link up. We'd love to have you, and we'll do more of them next year. So I've mixed the potatoes, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in my red onion, and I call for about 3 tablespoons, which is maybe a fifth of an onion, but I'm not going to leave some. I think this is more than 3 tablespoons. I'm just going to dump it all in. Now you could use scallions, but I prefer red onions for a couple reasons. Red onions give you some contrast in color. Color looks nice, and the crunch. I like the crunch of the red onion. The scallion doesn't give you the crunch. I put more than 3 tablespoons, so this will be an oniony potato salad, but that's okay. Make this your own. You know, some people, my mom never ate onions. And so if I were making this for my mom, I'd have a separate segment which would not have onions. I'm gonna grab my tablespoon. Let me actually get a clean tablespoon. And I'm going to get some relish. So I'm just using some pre-made organic dill relish. And I'm going to go with 3 tablespoons. I make up my own recipes. This one, I used fat-free vegan as a base, but I like to adjust recipes that I find elsewhere. So there's 3 tablespoons. Okay. It's looking good. You can add some dill weed if you'd like. So this is done. You can garnish it with maybe some herbs. Try some, a nice sprig of rosemary would look good. A lot of times when I cook, I like to have dishes that are more complete, that use a lot of items from our power plate. And the last time I made this, I actually cooked some tempeh. So I took some tempeh, I chopped it pretty fine, and I sauteed it in a cast iron pan with no oil, and then I put that in. I like that because it adds more crunch, it adds protein as well. But it depends on what else you're making. If you just want a simple potato salad side dish, and you have your tofu or your beans or your tempeh, you may not want to overdo it, and so this would be good as is. And that's what I'm going to do today for simplicity. But if this is a main course, I do recommend that you add some tempeh. You can do put some air fried tofu and mix that in as well. So that's it. I'm going to now serve. I'm going to sample it. So there we go. It looks nice. This is delicious. An easy dish, hearty. I think you'd like it. I encourage you guys to try it. So with that, we next move to Nancy Manifold in the United Kingdom, in England. Nancy's going to be making a creamy potato salad. Nancy, I always look forward to seeing what you have to make. Take it away, Nancy.
Thank you, Dilip. Your German potato salad looks delicious. I'm Nancy Manifold, and I'm going to make a creamy potato salad. I know it's the end of the summer, but you can actually eat this one hot or cold. So heading into the winter, it's delicious hot as well. I'm making it cold today, but it is delicious hot. It's a recipe from a website called Shane and Simple, and he has some very nice recipes on there. They're simple, they're whole food plant-based, and no added oil. So for this recipe, I'm going to start with the mayonnaise, and I'm making a cashew-based mayonnaise. Now, when we buy store-bought mayonnaise, even vegan mayonnaise, there's not a huge amount of nutritional value. So by making either the tofu mayonnaise that I made in the last show, or the cashew-based mayonnaise that I'm making today, not only do you get a creamy, delicious mayonnaise, but you do get healthy food with it. So the cashews are a great source of calcium. And there's very strong evidence that having an ounce or 30 grams, which is a palmful of nuts or seeds a day, is very good for heart health. And it's the monounsaturated fats. Now, we have to be a bit careful not eating too many nuts because they are high in calories, especially if one has type 2 diabetes or has weight issues. But generally, nuts are very good for you in small amounts. So what I'm doing is I have soaked these cashews for half an hour in, need that to settle in. I've soaked the cashews for half an hour in boiling water. And of course this happens when you're recording something. Oh, there we go. And drained them. You don't have to soak them if you have a high-speed blender, but it does make them creamier. So I'm making a double recipe. My goodness, they're all over the place. I'm making a double recipe. And I'm going to start with the cashews. And to this, I am adding some lemon juice and some apple cider vinegar. And I'm also adding yellow mustard. You can use Dijon mustard if you like. Salt, garlic powder, and onion powder. And I am putting all of that in. So this is the mayonnaise part. And it's very similar to the tofu mayonnaise I made last time, but instead of the cashews, I use silken tofu, but very similar spices and herbs. And then I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of water. And hopefully there's enough liquid that this will blend. I'm going to put the lid on. And apologize, that took longer than I expected it to. So I now have some mayonnaise, a nice thick mayonnaise, and nutritious mayonnaise. So I'm going to take a cup and a half of the mayonnaise and use that to make the dressing for the potato salad. So with this, I've got okay, that's a cup and another half cup of the mayonnaise. So as I say, this is much more nutritious than store-bought mayonnaise. Now for the flavoring for the potato salad itself, I'm using celery seed, salt, pepper, and again, some yellow mustard. So I'm putting all of that in to flavor the mayonnaise. Mixing that up. Okay, so I've got some mayonnaise there. Now for the potato salad, what I have used is salad potatoes, which are similar to new potatoes. They're small. You want a waxy potato for this. You don't want a floury potato because it falls apart. A waxy potato will hold its texture a little bit better. So what I've done is I've rinsed them and boiled them for 15 to 20 minutes until they're just a little bit of resistance to the knife. And then I have run them under cold water for about a minute to cool them down, and then added 3 tablespoons of white wine vinegar. And it's nice to add the vinegar when the potatoes are still a little bit warm because it absorbs the vinegar. And then I've let them cool down. So I have the potatoes here, and to them, you can add whatever you like, but I am adding chopped celery because I quite like a bit of crunch. There we go. And I am adding some salad onions or spring onions, green onions, depending what country you live in. And adding that. And then I'll give that a bit of a mix. And then what I'm doing is combining that with my nice mayonnaise mixture. So I'll put in, you can judge how much you want, how much dressing you want on that. To mix that up. It's a very quick and easy recipe. The only time really is cooking the potatoes, but while the potatoes are cooking, that's when you can put everything else together. And once you've made the cashew mayonnaise, you can keep it in the fridge for a few days. So it's all ready. There we go. Now, to that, add whatever you like. I really like dill in my potato salad. I'm just using dried dill. Obviously, feel free to use fresh dill if you have it, but I quite like the dried dill. And I'm shaking a bit of that on because I love the flavor. When I smell dill, it reminds me of being in my aunt's farmhouse and when she was pickling. And interestingly, my sister has the same memory when she smells dill. So that shows you how powerful the sense of smell is. There we go. And the other thing I didn't mention about potatoes is potatoes is a somewhat maligned vegetable, root vegetable. They're incredibly healthy. They're great, especially if you leave the skin on, which I have with these. They're a great source of fiber, potassium, and interestingly, vitamin C, which I'd have to say I would not have expected. But they are very healthy. And I'm sprinkling a bit more of the salad onions on. And if you then leave this in the fridge overnight, cover it, and you can eat it straight away, but if you leave it in the fridge overnight, the glycemic index of the potatoes goes down. And what that means is that the potatoes, it takes more effort for your body to digest them, which is good because it means that once potatoes are cooled, the body breaks down the sugars in them much more slowly and gives a much steadier blood sugar level, and which is important for anybody who has diabetes. So they're healthy in themselves, but if you want to lower the glycemic index of your potatoes, cook them, leave them in the fridge overnight until they're cold, and then you can reheat them after that if you want, but the glycemic index will have lowered. Okay, there we go. And there is my delicious potato salad, which my daughter is going to devour as soon as she gets home from work. So thank you very much. And I will pass you on to Cody Stubb, who is making, roasted garlic fingerlings. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks so much for that creamy potato salad recipe. It just looks delicious, and I've been really looking forward to finding one that looks just like that. So thank you for that. We're gonna try it out real soon. So welcome everybody to my home in Omaha, Nebraska. I am Cody Stubbe, and today I'm gonna share with you one of my family's favorite recipes is garlic roasted potatoes. I also call them fingerlings, so you'll see that on the recipe. But really, fingerlings just kind of mean smaller potatoes. And potatoes are really a great source of potassium. And so what you're gonna do to get started is you're gonna do a pot of water, and you're gonna put 1 to 2 packages of your potatoes in there. And you're gonna boil it and cook those potatoes for probably about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes. It kind of depends on the size of the potatoes. And then you're going to check it with a fork, and if it's just fork tender, you're gonna go ahead and pull it off the stovetop, drain the water, and then what you can do then is pour the potatoes onto a baking sheet, let them cool about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you're gonna take a knife and you're just gonna slice them in half. Now, if you have any of the potatoes that are just a little bit bigger, sometimes I cut those into quarters. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take those potatoes, which look like this then, see how they're nice and halved. And if you cook them too long, the peelings will start coming off and they get a little bit too mushy. So that's why I try to just kind of watch them, and when they get fork tender to pull them off. All right, so you have your potatoes, and these are the yellow potatoes, but you could do, there's different varieties of them. There's ones that have more of like that beautiful purple color, and the girls really like those too. Those are a fun variety to mix in. And so you got your potatoes, just like such, and then you're gonna take these gorgeous little sweet peppers, and they come in a nice little package, and you rinse them off, and then you slice them on up, and you're going to put them all in here as such. And then what I like to do next is take about a tablespoon of mustard seeds. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it here. So about a tablespoon. You can do more or less. Like with any recipe, it's just a guideline. It's kind of whatever you like. Now you can either use fresh garlic, mince it, and they're probably about 3 cloves worth. If you love garlic, you can do more than that. If you're not a huge garlic fan, then maybe 1 clove. All right, so you can mince that up, put it in here. For tonight, I'm just gonna do some garlic powder. And I'm gonna do about a teaspoon. There we go. And then some sweet paprika is always fun. I love paprika. And then probably about a teaspoon of this. It's kind of fun. It brings a beautiful color. I might add just a little bit more. All right. And then salt and pepper to taste. So I like to sprinkle just a little bit in there. Now, if you've ever tried smoked salt, this is a fun recipe to put that on. And just toss some of that in there. Now, if you use salt, make sure you get iodized salt. There we go. And some people do salt-free, and that's totally fine. You can leave it salt-free too. And then I'm just gonna mix it up, and look at the beautiful color. Now, I was thinking that, this is kind of a fun recipe that you could add in like fresh chopped rosemary, because rosemary is good in a lot of recipes. And it's kind of more of a heartier herb, so it would probably roast up pretty nicely with this. But I'm not going to do that for today's recipe. Today, I'm just going to leave it as such. but it smells delicious. The garlic and those peppers, the paprika, of course, and the potatoes. So that's how it looks right now. What I'm gonna do is put it on a baking sheet. Now, what I like to do is use like some kind of a liner. So parchment paper is great, or a silicone mat is wonderful as well. And if you don't have either, tinfoil works good too. And I'm just gonna spread this out here. All right, there. Just kind of want it one layer thick. And if you see like a big potato that you missed, you can just cut it in half again. What we're looking for is just to kind of get these roasted up and browned on the edges a little bit, and it's gonna be delicious. You could also add in like maybe onions. That would be really good in this. So that's what it looks like before. And I'm gonna be putting this into an oven that's preheated at about 400 degrees. And I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. I cook it for about 10 to 20 minutes. You just kind of have to check it. You don't want your peppers to get burnt completely. It's nice to get a little bit of a tinge on it, a little bit of browned edges, because that makes it kind of crispy and delicious. But oh my goodness, you guys, look at these peppers. So good. And the kids love it. They're gonna be looking forward to eating this today. Love it. And you know, peppers are a great source of vitamin C. So you got all sorts of great plant phytonutrients in here. Oh my goodness, antioxidants, very healthy. So this is one of our favorites, and I can't wait for you guys to try it. Let me know what you think of it. You can find me at Holistic Dish, and there is, let's see, some upcoming shows. You know, every month we have a show. We have a So Many Kids show with my 3 daughters and Dilip's daughter and Ella's children, me and Max. And our next show, I think, is October. So it's going to be coming up shortly. So please join us for that. Now I'm going to pass it on over to Susanna Dickman. She's going to make baked, stuffed, sweet and yellow potatoes. And I can't wait to see that. So thank you for joining me in my kitchen. All right, bye.
Thanks, Cody. That looks great. I can't wait to make your recipe. I'm Susanna Dickman from Evansville, Indiana, and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us this Saturday. You can follow me at Eat Plants Be Well on Facebook and on my website. Today I'm going to make a great stuffed potato bar. And this is one of my family's favorite meals. We do this sometimes during the week when we don't have a lot of time. I'll just plan ahead and bake some potatoes the night before, and we just kind of go around our fridge and see what do we have leftovers of that we can just stuff in our potatoes. So it's great. It's a great entertaining recipe. You know, fall is coming up. We might need something a little bit warmer. It might be too cool to go out and on our grills. So we can have a potato bar. And then if you've got picky eaters, you know, they can pick and choose what they want to add and what they want to stuff their potato with. You can stuff potatoes, any kind of potatoes, sweet potatoes. I've used some organic russet today. I've got gold potatoes. You can even stuff, you know, it's nice to have the big ones, but you can get little red potatoes and stuff those, and people will just eat 3 or 4 of them. When I'm looking for potatoes to stuff, if I want to have big ones, I will look for a nice, good size. And I do get organic potatoes because you want to leave the skins on. The skins are high in fiber. We know that potatoes have a lot of potassium and calcium, magnesium, so they are really, really good for us. They have a lot of nutrients and they're not a lot of calories, so I can eat a lot of potatoes. I really like potatoes. When I'm getting ready to bake them, I will just kind of scrape off any imperfections because I do, like I said, want to keep the peel on. So just I just scrape off a little if I need to. And then what I do is I stab it 7 or 8 times. Poke it, I guess. That sounds a little bit better. But just to make some holes. And you want to go in. You can see I'm going in fairly a good amount. But that should be good. Now, I don't like to wrap my potatoes. I like leaving them just like this. Sometimes people will put tin foil on their potatoes. I find when I bake them in tin foil, they get kind of gummy. So I like to just leave them like this. I will put these then on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper or silicone, and I will bake them anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. Now remember, the cooking time is gonna be based on the size of your potatoes. This bigger russet is going to take longer than this little yellow. Now sweet potatoes I find cook even quicker. Just because this one is so big, you're going to want to be careful and be mindful that it's going to take maybe less cooking time than you would think based on its size. So I always like to start my oven, my timer at 30 minutes, no matter what size potato I have. And then I will check it at 30 minutes, and if it needs more time, I will go 10-minute increments so that I don't, it's not in there forever. But I like to, you can tell if they're done by pressing them. You can see, okay, this potato has some give. You can see the skin kind of crinkling up when I squeeze it. You'll also hear a hissing sound from the potatoes. And that's a clue for you that they are done. You also can take a knife and just insert it, and you can see how easily that goes through. So obviously these potatoes are done. Those are all different ways for you to check. I find, I'll take the knife first, I'll listen for the hissing, you might see some juices bubbling up, and then I will feel it. And I will feel it all over, because sometimes it might be done on the top and not on the bottom. So you also want to flip them over. Okay, so let's get to stuffing our potatoes. Now the first thing I'm going to do is take my first potato, and I'm just going to make a slit down the middle. And then I'm just going to squeeze it. And you can see there's a nice amount for me to begin stuffing this potato. Now the stuffing part is where the fun begins. I just have a few ideas on how you can stuff your potatoes. The possibilities are endless. So, think about what might you want to stuff in this potato, and put a comment in the comment section. So the first thing I'm going to do is our more traditional, typically broccoli and cheese, right? When you go to restaurants, that is what you get. So I have some broccoli that I just sauteed in a pan. So I'm just going to put broccoli in there. And if, broccoli we know is a great cruciferous vegetable that we need to eat. Let's say you're not a fan of broccoli. Well, use cauliflower, okay? Use a mixed vegetable, carrots, peas, and zucchini. You can stuff any vegetable in your potato. This is a cheese sauce that I made that this one uses sunflower seeds. You can use one with cashews, or there are potato and carrot. There are a ton of different recipes that you can use. The last thing I'm going to do, and I know I made some carrot bacon when I made my potato salad a few months ago on the show, so you can find the recipe there. This is just coconut, and I am just going to sprinkle some of that on. So here's your traditional cheese and broccoli coconut bacon. Just a great, that's one of my favorites. That's one that I would eat. Okay, so let's take our second one. Again, I just cut it and then I'm going to squeeze it. All right, so this one I think, I made a chili earlier this week and it just has green and red peppers and some corn and obviously chili and cumin spices and kidney beans. And I even used a little bit of TVP. So, you know, to make like a more meatier texture. But let me go ahead and just stuff this with my chili. And I'm being really, you know, if I weren't on camera, I'd probably stuff it up to there. I'd have so much stuffing. And then I have a little salsa. So this is how you can kind of, you know, use hot salsa, medium salsa. And then of course we're gonna have to put some cheese too, right? So let me go ahead and put that there. But totally different, you know, different kind of different kind of flavor. I'm gonna add some chives to this one too. So there's my second one. All right. Now, another thing that I cooked this week were mushrooms. You know, we know mushrooms are so good for us. So I just made some mushrooms with onions and garlic. I just sauteed them. And I didn't even add any spices because to me they taste so good. But you can add, you know, whatever spices you like. But let me go get some mushrooms in there. This one kind of split when I was cooking. So, but it works. You know, it works. These are going to be eaten with a fork and a knife, right? We're just going to be cutting. And I think this time I made a cashew sour cream. So I'm going to put some of the cashew sour cream. You can see how thick this is. Oh gosh, this is just so yummy. And I'll throw a couple more chives on here. But there, we've got a totally different flavor here with the cashew cheese. So let me get that one there. Okay, the last one I'm going to do is, and you know, I think I want some bacon. What do you guys think? I also want some bacon on this mushroom one, so I'm going to sprinkle some of that on. Okay, the last one, another recipe that I made this week was a tapenade. We've been getting a lot of eggplant from our farm share, and so I've made eggplant bacon. I've made, oh gosh, I made this tapenade. I just sauteed some eggplant with mushrooms and zucchini that I had too, and just made a great dish with some teriyaki sauce. And just, you know, eggplant is another one of those vegetables that you can just do about anything with. So I'm going to put some of this tapenade in there. Okay. And I think I'll go ahead again with my, oh, this one kind of fell apart too, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and add some of my cashew cheese to this. So let me get that on there. This is another great combination. Okay. And do we want bacon? I say yes. What do you guys say? I'm going to go ahead and add some bacon, because it just adds that crunch and it is so good. All right, so I guess I have to move these guys over a little bit. What a great meal. What a great meal for, you know, individualization. Everybody can have what they want, and it is so good. We're going to go ahead and put some chives on there too. All right, so tell me in the comments what you might put on your potato. Like I said, the possibilities are endless. Sometimes what I like to do is just look in my fridge and go, oh, we've got a little bit of this left over and a little bit of that left over, and really not enough for everyone to have. So I'll say, let's bake some potatoes and we'll just use it as toppings. And then we'll just put together some of our sauces and we've got a great, delicious meal. We've used up all our leftovers, so nothing's gone to waste. And everybody's happy because they're eating something that they love. All right, thanks so much for watching. We all really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us. And next up is Karen in Austin, Texas. And Karen, I always love your recipes, so I can't wait to see what you're making. Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks, Susanna. That looks delicious. Hi, I am Karen Osborne, and welcome to my kitchen in Austin, Texas. My website is myfoodfitnessandfun.com. And I am also going to be using some yellow potatoes. We're going to be making yellow or Yukon Gold potatoes with kale and mushrooms. And this is a vitamin, mineral, and antioxidant, just nutrient-packed recipe. It's a really hearty breakfast, or you can use it for a side for lunch or dinner. And let's get started. Since I already have, I'm going to turn the heat back on. So all I did was water saute some onions so you wouldn't have to sit here and watch me do this for 5 minutes. So I heated up the pan and I put the onions in and just kept moving them around. And when they started browning and sticking, then I add a little bit of water and just moved them around until they got soft. And so now what I'm going to do is add some garlic to my onions. And garlic and onions are alliums, and they have a sulfur compound that is cancer protective. It's also a prebiotic fiber, and so it helps feed the good gut bugs and helps your digestion. And if you have good digestion, then you're more able to absorb all the nutrients in this beautiful plant food that we're using here. All right, so we're just going to cook that for about a minute. The garlic, keep it moving so nothing burns, sticks and burns. And then I'm going to add some mushrooms. So what I did, I prepared everything in advance. I cut everything really thin. You want to prepare it all in advance so that, because it goes really fast once you start cooking it. So I'm gonna put the mushrooms in, and we're just gonna let the water cook out of the mushrooms. I'm going to put the lid on and reduce the heat just a little bit. I'm going to put the lid on, and the water's going to cook out and keep everything from sticking. And while that is cooking down, I'm going to show you what I did already. So I had a Yukon Gold. I'm only making a quarter of the recipe because it's just me. I'm going to eat this as my meal. So I cut the Yukon Gold potato into rounds, and then cut the rounds into quarters. And I steamed them. You can see my shape. Steamed them in the Instant Pot. So I cooked them for 6 minutes and pressure cooked them, and then let the steam out as soon as the time was up. And you could steam them on your stove. That would be fine. And I'm just gonna check these mushrooms real quick. Let me cook a little bit longer. I'm gonna put a little bit of water in there. Keep the onions from sticking. While these mushrooms cook down, we just want them to get soft. So it smells really good. Garlic, onions. Just a little back on. Let them cook down a little more, and I'll show you what I did with the kale. And so the kale, I just hold the stem and pull the leaf off of the stem. You can save these stems. There's a lot of minerals in the stem. juice them or cut them up and put them in your beans or whatever. You could even put them in here, it's fine. And then I just rolled the kale. And kale is a powerhouse of nutrition, and it's got vitamins and minerals and fiber. It's a cruciferous vegetable. I'm just cutting them into tiny, like really thin ribbons of kale. So the cruciferous vegetables have sulforaphane, which is actually cancer protective. And if you probably heard it before, but Dr. Greger's hack and hold method is to cut them. If you damage the vegetable, then the precursor and the enzyme combine and make that sulforaphane. Gotta check my mushrooms real quick. Yeah, there we go. Alright, cooking down. Alright, so the sulforaphane gets formed when the precursor and the enzyme combine. The enzyme is damaged by heat, so but the precursor is not, and the sulforaphane is not. And when the vegetable gets damaged, like by cutting or chewing, then they combine and create that sulforaphane. You can let this, like cut it and let it sit for 40 minutes before you cook it, and you have the sulforaphane, so you're not losing it in the heat. And let me just check the mushrooms one more time. They're doing good. Alright, and what I did forget to do is put in the thyme, a little spice in there. If you wanted to, you could put pepper. You could put pepper in the end. Smelling really good. Okay, so then we're going to, I'm just going to let that cook just a little more. And so I have the Yukon and Gold potatoes, and they are a mix between, or a cross between the North American white potato and the South American yellow potato. And they have like 3 times as much vitamin C as a russet potato. They have half the sodium, or less than half of the sodium, as white or red potatoes. And they also have more protein than the white potatoes. So I think this is good here. And we're just going to add the kale. And we're just going to cook it a little bit until the kale is bright green and wilted. We're also going to put in some wheat-free turmeric. It's organic. And so the kale, the mushrooms, and the onions are going to soak up all this flavor. Stir that around a little bit and put the lid back on. So there is some sodium in that turmeric, but it's a soy product, and soy seems to be protective of blood pressure. You don't have the effects that you would have as much as if you were just eating salt. So we're just going to let this cook down just a little, absorb the flavors. I'm going to put the lid on to let that happen. And while that is happening, I'm going to take a little bit of plant-based yogurt. It's just plain yogurt. You can use any, make your own, or buy just plain plant-based yogurt. And what I have here is, I have onion powder, garlic granules. You could use garlic powder. I have smoked paprika, and I have a little bit of salt. If you're not using salt, you could leave it out. And I'm just gonna add that to the yogurt and stir it up. And we have a nice sauce to garnish. It gives it a little smoky flavor when you mix it all in. Alright, so we're just gonna check the kale again. Yep. Nice and green. And give it a little stir. And then I'm gonna turn off the heat. And and add some lemon juice. So this is a gas stove, but if you had electric, you would probably want to remove this from the burner. So I'm going to add just a little lemon juice, and what that's going to do is not enough to make it taste lemony, but it's going to give it a little zip, and it's going to add some vitamin C, and it's going to take care of any bitterness in that kale that might be there. So we'll just stir it around until it's all combined, and then we're just going to add the cooked potatoes. So the greens and the mushrooms and the onions have soaked up all of that flavor. And then we're going to cut it with these velvety, smooth, creamy potatoes. All that color, it looks so good. Just stir to combine. And then all we have to do is put it in our serving bowl. If you're making the whole recipe, you need a bigger skillet. All right, so we're just gonna put it in the bowl. I don't want to waste any bit of that. All right. And then we're going to top it with the sauce. Move it over here. And that was really quick, yummy, and who needs eggs for breakfast when you could have something like this? So that is just one more thing to do with potatoes. There's a ton of things you can do with potatoes. And for something else fun that you can do, I'm gonna hand you over to Melissa Beth Sherlock in Omaha, Nebraska for some Crockpot Pizza Potatoes. Take it away, Melissa.
Hello everyone, and thank you Karen for introducing me, and your dish looks really yummy. I can't wait to try it. I am Melissa Sherlock. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and today I am going to make a crock pot dish. I know that's kind of old technology, but there is something really nice about being able to load up a crock pot and walk out the door all day. So my dish is pizza potatoes in the crock pot, and I first made this dish when I did a Mary's Mini. A Mary's Mini is part of the McDougall program where you focus on one type of starch. His wife, Mary, made this program where you basically eat one starch, either rice or potatoes, for like 10 days to kind of reset your palate. And this is one of the ways that I ate potatoes during that 10 days. So I have already made the dish because it's in the crock pot for 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, and I wanted you to be able to see the finished product. But I am going to show you kind of how I layer it. I'm just going to make a small casserole dish basically the same way so that you can see me put it together. Okay, so I am starting with Yukon Gold potatoes. These are kind of small ones. It doesn't matter how big they are. The Yukon Gold potatoes actually have more nutrition than the regular russets. Any kind of potato works though. I have used russets often. I do buy organic potatoes because I eat the skins, and potatoes are a product that are sprayed during their growth, and also the potatoes are sprayed after harvest to prevent eyes from sprouting. So therefore, potatoes, since I eat so many, are one of the things that I choose to buy organic. You can peel your potatoes if you like, but especially with the Yukon Gold, I find that the peels are so thin, it's just easy and nice to keep them on. So, with my chef's knife, sometimes I cut a little layer off the bottom of the potato. That's just a little bit of skin that I put aside, and it helps my potato stay flat so that I don't have an accident. And you can use a mandolin for this, but I am just cutting the potatoes very thin. Oops. And it really doesn't matter how thin they are, just try to get them pretty uniform. So I'm just gonna cut one of these potatoes for today. When I get to the end of the potato, sometimes I just lay it down and make some thin slices lengthwise to use it all. And I'll put those aside, and then I'm just going to layer them in my crock pot and try to just kind of, you know, cover the bottom all over so that it looks like that. And then basically you just put your pizza toppings on. So actually the sauce, I'm using this pizza sauce from it happens to be from Trader Joe's, and I like it because it's not chunky, but a chunky one would work too, but it also has no oil. So any kind of no oil pasta sauce works very well. I'm happening to use this pizza sauce since we're calling it pizza potatoes. It already has some seasoning in. So you add some water to the pizza sauce to thin it a little bit, but I am using a little of my homemade veggie broth instead. For the whole recipe, you use like a 1/4 cup. I'm just gonna put a little bit in there and shake it up. And I'm just gonna use a little bit here. I don't have a whole jar left over from when I made the recipe. But you put some on, and then we're gonna start layering our ingredients. So that includes onion. Anything that you put on a pizza, usually on a pizza I put red onion, but in this sometimes I use white onion. Just gonna layer that on. I'm gonna layer on some bell pepper. I really like to use red bell pepper, but since this dish is already very red, I'm gonna use green bell pepper from my garden today. I'm gonna layer some of that on. You can cut these as fine or as large as you like. And I like artichoke hearts on my pizza sometimes. This is totally optional. All of these toppings are totally optional, but I'm gonna layer on some artichoke hearts, maybe just a couple. Now I buy these in the brine with no oil. Oftentimes you'll find the artichokes in a jar and they're packed in olive oil or some kind of oil. So I get them in a can. I get ones at Trader Joe's that are packed in the brine, and I transfer the leftovers to a jar because I don't want them to get a tinny taste when I put the leftovers in the fridge. Then I'm gonna just use a little bit of spinach, and I'm going to just kind of, oh, there's my cute kitchen scissors, aren't they cute? Little toucan, I got those in Florida. And sometimes I just roughly chop it a little bit. You don't have to use spinach. I'm gonna use spinach and basil in mine. So let's see, I'll put a little bit of basil in because I love basil on my pizza. This is also from my garden, so it's a great way to use it. And of course, it's a flavor builder. Okay, so now I'm going to add some mushrooms. I went ahead and bought these already sliced just for ease. Sometimes I'll break them up a little bit because sometimes when they come sliced, they're a little big, but I love mushrooms on my pizza. So I'm gonna put those on. And now I'm gonna put on tomato slices. Now you could actually use, this is from my garden too, isn't it beautiful? You could use smaller tomatoes, you could use cherry tomatoes from your garden. I'm not doing a very great job of cutting this. But then I'm just gonna layer on these slices and maybe one more. And then I'm gonna add the seasonings. Now these are totally up to you as well. I've got nutritional yeast, which kind of gives a cheesy flavor. I always put that on top of my pizza. I'm going to use a little bit of onion powder, which I think adds a lot of flavor, even though we have onion. I'm going to use garlic, granulated garlic. I like a lot of garlic. And I'm going to use like a no salt, kind of an Italian blend. This one's from Costco, but they have one called 21 Salute at Trader Joe's, or you can get a good Italian blend anywhere. I use a little tiny touch of smoked paprika just to give it a little meaty taste. There we go, not too much. And I'm going to put a little cayenne. Like I said, all these seasonings are to your taste. Now, I'm also going to use some black olives. I think I'll put those on top. Then you take this layer, all your toppings, and just cover it. Now, this is not quite enough, but you will have this all covered with sauce when you're done. And then if you like olives, you can put some olives on the top. So that's basically what I did in the crock pot. And then over here, I'm going to show you how it spoons out. The other thing that I added to mine to make it hearty like a meal, I added a can of cannellini beans. So in that layering, I dumped out and rinsed a can of white cannellini beans to add protein and heartiness to the dish. Now we'll get in here and see my inside my crock pot. And this is, if I cooked it longer, some of this juice would cook out, but I'm spooning it out. You can see this could be a side dish or a main dish. I might put a little basil ribbons on the top. I am going to serve it with toasted sprouted grain bread, a little steamed broccoli, and always fruit with every meal. So that's my pizza potatoes. Thank you for listening, and we are going to go to Angelita Hughes next in Greenville, South Carolina. Thanks for being with me.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Angie. I am in Greenville, South Carolina. I am very honored to be a Food for Life instructor, and I'd like to welcome you guys to another episode of So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. All the recipes we've been seeing are just absolutely amazing. Melissa, you just completely outdid yourself with what you created. I can't wait to try that. Again, thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us. I know that we are all very grateful for you guys tuning in. So today I'm going to be making potato taquitos, and those are usually fried. But I'm going to use my air fryer today, and this is something that I grew up eating. I really enjoyed them. We call them taquitos de papa. But anyway, so the recipe is in the booklet, and I'm just going to I made half a batch because it's just my husband and our 13-year-old son will be eating these. So the thing I like about these types of recipes is you can substitute. So I didn't have enough potatoes baked, and I didn't want to bake them. So I added 1.5 cups of potatoes, which is what I came out with, and then half a cup of steamed carrots. I mixed it all together, and that's what I have in this bowl right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add my hummus, and you can buy the pre-packaged hummus, or you can make it yourself. It's not very difficult to make. I'm sure we've got a recipe somewhere. So we're going to put this in here. You can use, again, whatever flavor you like, however you like it seasoned. I just go with the plain. To me, that just gives it that perfect consistency. And then the only seasoning I'm going to have in here is Valentina. So this is one of my favorite. I even put that on fruit. It just gives it a very good vinegary, garlicky flavor. And you can salt and pepper this to your tasting, whatever amount you like to add. I don't add any additional salt because I did buy a hummus that's already, it's pre-made, so I'm sure there's some salt in that. And you really don't even need it. Then we're gonna add some vegan mayonnaise. Not a lot, just a little bit. And this also helps it to brown up on the ends. It's just amazing what it will do. I use this all the time when I'm making these type of taquitos. And so we want to mix this up really, really well, but we don't want to make it runny, but we don't want it to be too thick either. I'll show you exactly how we're going to knead it. And then I've got some homemade vegetable broth here. All I did was all the vegetable scraps that were left over, I saved them, put them in a freezer bag. Once that bag is full, I put it in a stock pot, covered all the way up to the top of where the vegetables are at, or the scraps, and then just let it cook down to about halfway. I just leave it and forget it, and then come back, and I've got this amazing vegetable stock. You can add a couple of cloves of garlic in there, maybe some rosemary. But anyway, so that's just another way of saving money in the kitchen. So we're just going to keep mixing this. You can get your kids involved, your spouse. If you don't have potatoes that are baked, you can use mashed potatoes in this. Just follow the instructions on the package. And make your potatoes just, you won't have to add any more liquid to it, but then you would add the hummus, and then you would add the mayonnaise and salt and pepper if you'd like, and your hot sauce. All right, so here it is. It's nice and mixed, and that's what it looks like. Almost like a creamy peanut butter, almost. So with the hot sauce, you don't have to use this. You can use chipotle, you can use chili powder. You don't have to use it at all if you don't like. I'm just gonna eye it because I really love this stuff. Chipotle peppers, again, are delicious in this. You can even mince up some fresh peppers, dice them up, and add them to this mixture. And it will be wonderful. If you want to add vegetables to this, if you want to add more vegetables like corn, or maybe some green beans, maybe even some cauliflower. You can do half cauliflower and then half potatoes. That'll give you another way to use cauliflower. You can't go wrong. I'm just going to heat up my tortillas according to the package, so give me just 1 second. So I'm cheating a little bit, but I was going to show you the brand that I use the most, because this is as close to homemade as I've been able to find. Of course, you can make your own tortillas. It doesn't take a long time, but those are my favorite. It's just 3 ingredients in there, and so you can't go wrong. All right, let me get these. All you're doing is you're just making them warm. Pliable is what we're doing, so we can roll them. And you want to add 2 to 3 tablespoons of mixture in the center. Excuse me while I turn this on. And you just put it in the center. And oh, I think I forgot to take out. I did. Sorry. This is the beauty of going live, right? Okay, so I have it lined with parchment paper. As you can see, I put the filling right in the center. You roll it over, and then you push it back a little bit, and then you're just going to roll it. And because the tortillas are nice and soft, you don't need a toothpick, so you can put it directly on your parchment paper, flat side down. And you're just going to follow that until you get that whole area filled. You don't want to put that much filling in there, you don't have to. roll it. But this is how we used to do them, and then we would put a toothpick in there, and then we would drop it in the oil. But now that I use my air fryer, I don't have to worry about that. And again, this is great for the kids to help. And here we go, we'll do another one. We roll it in there. If you have any of this left over, it's really good to make a burrito with it in a flour tortilla, and then just add some fresh greens, and you won't have any waste. You can freeze whatever's left over, let it cool down completely. It shouldn't be hot to begin with, but in case it is, let it cool down completely. Put it in a freezer bag, make sure you label it, what's in there, and the date. Because I've been known to put stuff in the freezer, saying I'll remember what it is, and then when I go to take it out, I have no idea what's in there, and it's just like, all right, mystery dinner. Okay, so we're doing the last one. So I'm able to fit 6 in here, just like that. Now the other thing that I do is I take just a regular spray bottle, I sanitize it, and all I keep in here is just water. And then I just lightly spray it, that's it. I put it in the air fryer. I let mine cook at about 375, 400, depending if I just started the first batch or if it's a second batch. So the first batch is at 400, and then the second batch is at 375. Anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. There's no need to turn them. They'll come out crispy. And you can eat them nice and hot, fresh out of the air fryer, or you can let them cool down. They're really good. You can put some salsa on top of it. You can do the potato and cheese, vegan cheese on top of that. You can do guacamole, you can do pico de gallo, you can do all kinds of things with it. But anyway, thank you so much for spending Saturday with us. I do appreciate that. My recipe is quick and easy. If you have any questions, please stay to the end and ask your questions. We're going to be doing a giveaway. And now I'd like to present Jana, who is in Abu Dhabi, and she is going to be making potato kabib. So take it away, Jana. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hello everybody, thank you Angelita. That was again an amazing recipe that you've demonstrated. So hard to come after you. I need to do something fabulous. Welcome everybody to my kitchen in Abu Dhabi. Last month I was in Italy trying to do the reconnaissance work for our plant-based tour to Italy next year. If you have any interest to go to Italy for a whole food plant-based tour, do let me know. Send me a message. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So today our topic is potatoes, and everyone loves potatoes. I decided I would go out of my comfort zone to explore a recipe from my childhood growing up in Turkey, and it's a recipe that's really traditional in the Middle East, also in southern Turkey, but thus also all over Turkey. It's called kubbe, and in Turkey we call it içli köfte. It means burger with something inside. I decided to make a plant-based version of it. I went online, explored a lot, but more importantly, I talked to a lot of childhood friends of mine, which gave me this wonderful opportunity to reconnect and catch up. And some childhood aunties of mine as well, to get the tips from them how they make this wonderful kubbe at home and how I can make it plant-based. So it's actually rather easy, just a few steps that you need to follow. it's championing potatoes because it's the most abundant ingredient in the whole dish. So now I don't have one to show you because I used it all in my cooking. I made a prototype and then today I made another one. The second good ingredient is the onion, which is going in the filling. And the fun fact is that it's got a lot of nuts in it. Traditionally it's made with walnuts, and I decided to add also a little bit of pistachio nuts because they're special from the south of Turkey. So to add a little bit more flavor. And instead of meat, which is the traditional way, I used mushrooms. So I blitzed them in a small food processor, and they're not very tiny, so that you can have a little bit of a feeling of mushroom in the mix, and then that's it. And bulgur, and that goes bulgur and potatoes make the dough. So we have two parts to this dish, a dough and a filling. The dough is made with boiling the potatoes first, getting them soft, and then you smush them. And surprise, I realized in my Abu Dhabi kitchen I don't have a potato masher, so it was all done by hand using a fork. And while your potatoes are cooking, you soak some bulgur. Actually, with this recipe takes half a cup. And the half a cup you soak in a bowl. Basically, you put it in and then you top it with and pass it by about a finger more of hot water, and you just let it stand there. So forget about it. And while you're starting all your cooking process, also make a flax egg. The recipe is there, but it's easy enough. I put a tablespoon of ground flax and 3 tablespoons of water, and also set that aside because after about 15 minutes, it's much better, more functional as a egg substitute. So the egg substitute is necessary for the dough as well. In the dough, we use a pepper paste. This is something, this is like a staple in Middle Eastern cooking. Pepper paste comes in sweet or spicy. This recipe calls for sweet. If near you or online you can find a Middle Eastern supplier, look for pepper paste and have it in your fridge. I have this big one. We're only 2, so it lasts quite a long time. So you put just a tiny bit of cumin to give this little whiff of cumin to it, but not overpowering, and then salt and pepper. And then, if you had seen me 10 minutes ago, you have the smushed up potatoes and the fluffy bulgur, you put it here, and the pepper, salt and pepper, the pepper paste, salt and pepper, and I had my hands in it. It was just like gooey, gushy, and maybe brought me back to my childhood. And I smushed it well. It also gave me an opportunity to smush out some of the potatoes that I hadn't really got well. Once it's ready, you put a line through it, and because you're going to use half for the bottom and half for the top. And for the filling, you slice your onion finely. And for this recipe, I used an onion like this. This gave me 2 cups of finely sliced onions. So it was about this big, just to give you an idea. And so finely sliced onions and finely chopped, well, not so finely, a little bit feeling to it, chopped mushrooms go into your pan and get sauteed. Once the onions and the mushrooms are soft and all the liquid in the pan is gone, I added the sliced chopped nuts, and make sure the nuts have a bite, because when you bite into your food, once it's all done, you want that bite that comes from the nuts. Otherwise it's this all smushy thing, which is not the traditional way. And I added the parsley, the nuts, and a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's ready. So it's actually really easy. Might sound like, oh my god, there are too many things to do, but no. So just to save some time, I started it. I put a thin layer of the, you can see maybe here, it's a really thin layer of the dough, evenly spread along the oven-proof dish. And this recipe makes a perfect one for a 8 by 11 dish. That's, I think, 20 by 28 centimeters, 8 by 11 inches. So you put it very thinly on the bottom. You put the filling also thinly. I had made a mistake of making it really thick. Now the flavor was good, but I got sort of a warning from my aunties back home saying, you don't make it so thick. It's not traditional if you make it thick. So you spread the filling thinly all over the base. So the idea is to have equal amounts of base, filling, and a top. They shouldn't be thicker than each other. And so I'm just putting it all here. And if there's a little bit of extra, you can make it thicker if you wish, but if you want it to be traditional, you don't make it thicker. Don't make the same mistake I did. So here it is. I'm gonna save this because I can use it in a wrap, and I'm sure it will be a delicious wrap. So then you put the rest of the dough on top, and you spread it evenly. It's a bit gooey, and so I'm gonna do it roughly here. It's getting a bit messy because I'm hurrying, but I can relax and make it easier. So as you see, you can spread your dough on top, making sure that you don't capture all the base into the dough. They need to be separated. But in any case, you get the idea. The pepper paste gives the dough a nice orangey color, which otherwise would be a pale potato colored thing. And also, of course, an amazing pepper paste flavor, which is also pepper paste, I think. No, I think it's the tomato paste that qualifies as umami, isn't it? I don't know. The pepper paste is delicious though. Okay, so I have almost all of it here. So there we go. This is sticky to my hand, and the consistency is quite nice. There, here we have it. Then, traditionally, you make crisscross signs on it. There's my knife. Here it is. There we go. So to make the diamond shape, you can do about 2 inches. You basically just slice the surface. You don't have to go all the way through. That's not the intention. This, when baked, this makes the, and then you go on the horizontal about the same width. So there you go. Ta-da! We are ready. Now, in the meantime, you heated your oven to about 375 degrees centigrade. That comes to about 375 Fahrenheit, 190 centigrade. This is how it looks prior to going to the oven. You know how we always say preheat your oven, but please, with all this energy crisis, be a little bit of, more conscious about your energy use. Start your oven when you think you might use it. This can wait. This doesn't have to immediately go in the oven. So you can get your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Stick this in for a half hour, and you will see that the top gets nicely browned and it gets slightly crunchy. The trick is to use the top and bottom heater selection of your oven so that both the bottom and the top gets evenly cooked. Now, we don't want it to be crunchy like a cracker, but we want it to get slightly toasted and slightly crunchy. I know it sounds crazy, but this is ready to go in the oven, and I will do it this evening. So I'm going to put it aside and show you what I had prepared yesterday for my prototype. So the little diamond-shaped slices look like this when they're done. They've gotten harder and a little bit crunchy, and of course you always have to decorate it a little bit. Some green looks beautiful on orange. So this is it. This dish goes really, really well as a starter, or you can have it as a main course, serve bigger portions, and with a wonderful salad. Now, a salad of nice greens with tahini dressing goes beautifully with it. And there's some work for you. The tahini dressing recipe is in the August recipe booklet because I had shared it then when I had made a rice salad. So this is it, folks. It's a lovely traditional recipe that I'm very happy to have turned into a plant-based one. And I hope you do it at home and enjoy it and give us feedback. And now I'm coming to the end of mine. I'd like to remind you that there's Q&A afterwards, and if you have any questions, do it then. We do have a giveaway. We give a gift, and the recipe booklet is online too. And now I hand it over to Carolyn in Montgomery, Alabama. Take it away, Carolyn. Bye, everybody. See you again in Abu Dhabi, hopefully, and in Italy next year. Bye.
Thank you, John. That looks really good. I can't wait to try your recipe. Just wonderful. Welcome to Montgomery, Alabama. I'm Carolyn Strickland, and today I'm making Hasselback potatoes. And you may have seen Hasselback potatoes before, maybe on TikTok or Pinterest. So they've gotten popular again recently, but interestingly, they originated in Stockholm, Sweden in 1940 at a restaurant called the Hasselbacken. And so that's why the name Hasselback potatoes, from the Hasselbacken restaurant in Stockholm, Sweden. So the interesting thing about them is that I believe they started making them because they wanted to find a way to make baked potatoes, but make them bake faster. Because, you know, when you're making a baked potato, it takes a really long time to get a baked potato baked all the way through. So I guess the chef came up with a way to get them to bake faster by slicing them in very thin slices, but not cutting them all the way through. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I like to use Yukon Gold. You can really use any kind of potato you want to for this. Really, probably even sweet potatoes, but that's for another show. So these are just small Yukon Gold potatoes, and I have figured out that the way to get them to bake faster and to cook through faster is to use the smaller ones. And it's so this one is a little bit bigger than this one, but I mean, really, it's going to cook at about the same amount of time. But you want it to cook maybe 30 minutes or so, and then another 15 minutes in the oven. So it is a little bit faster than a traditional baked potato. So what we're going to do is I have a couple of chopsticks, and they're important for this recipe because you're going to need them to help you keep from cutting all the way through the potato. So the first thing we have to do is make it where it doesn't rock back and forth and it doesn't tip while I'm trying to cut it. So I'm going to cut a section off the bottom, just a small section like that, to make it flat on one side. And I'll set that aside. We're actually using this again. So set it between the chopsticks, and the chopsticks are the guide to keep you from cutting all the way through the potato, because we do want it to stay together at the bottom. Okay, so with the chopsticks on either side, and then the knife going straight down and stop at the chopsticks, and then you're going to take little bitty slices. So the down shot would be really nice right here, so you could see what I'm doing close up here. So I'm just slicing straight through to the chopsticks. Right there. And you want to keep your fingers obviously out of the way of the knife blades. So keep them over, and then I'll just put my hand over it to keep my fingers out of the way. But you can see I've made these nice little slices and stopping at the chopsticks. If you don't have any chopsticks, you could use spoon handles, but chopsticks kind of give it just about the right amount of depth on it. So, and then you can see it'll open up in this like accordion little way, which we can put things down in between the little slices of potato, which would be really good. So here's where I'll do one more to show you one more time. So we've got the bottom sliced off. And this is a smaller one between the chopsticks, and then straight through in thin little slices. And I'll get my hand out of the way. Don't want to cut my fingers. And then same thing. So it's still connected at the bottom, but it's sliced all the way through in little bitty slices. And then I've already done 2 other ones, so I'll move those up here so you can see. Okay, so we're going to use this little piece that we sliced off the bottom, set it on the tray, and then you put the potato, set it flat, put it flat on the tray so the little round part is on the top. And then when you put the potato on it, it helps to open the potato up a little bit. So it's like a little stand for the potato. And then as it's baking, because it's sitting on that piece that you cut off earlier, it'll start opening up a little bit more while it's baking, which is really cool. So it looks really neat when it's done. Okay, so then we're making what we call a cornstarch slurry. And instead of using oil or butter like the traditional Hasselback potato, we're using some low sodium vegetable broth. And then, so this is about a half a cup of low sodium vegetable broth and a half a tablespoon of cornstarch, because that's going to help it stay crispy without oil. So we'll get that stirred up, get the cornstarch dissolved. And then you're just going to take a pastry brush. And if you don't have a pastry brush, you could just use a spoon and dip the pastry brush in it and just spread it over the potatoes, because you want to coat the potatoes with this cornstarch slurry and get it down in between the pieces if you can, all the way in there. And I put this on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. So the parchment paper will help with how messy this is too. And it's okay if it's messy, it's just going in the oven anyway, and then you can get rid of the parchment paper. Okay, so we just want to get them nice and moistened. And it's really such a cool recipe because you can use any spice or flavor profile you like. So if you want to do smoked paprika or thyme or basil or oregano on them, that's fine. I really like them with just garlic powder, onion powder, a little salt and pepper. And then today, just to change it up a little bit, I'm adding some powdered rosemary, which I thought, rosemary is so good with potatoes. It's just such a nice flavor, but I didn't really want big pieces of rosemary leaves in it, which would be fine. But I just thought the flavor of rosemary sounded really good without having big rosemary leaves. So now that these are all moistened, I'll sprinkle it with some black pepper, and maybe some onion powder and some garlic powder, because I really like garlic powder. And then that powdered rosemary, which is just fabulous. It smells so good. And then we'll put those in the oven at 425 degrees for about 30 minutes. And they'll start to open up and get crispy on the edges. After 30 minutes, you want to take it out and do the same cornstarch and vegetable broth slurry on it again. Just coat it one more time. You could sprinkle it with more seasoning at that point as well. And then after, put it back in for about 15 more minutes, and then still at 425. And then test it with a skewer or a toothpick to see if they're baked all the way through, but they should be pretty well baked by then and nice and crispy. So I'm going to set those aside and I'll show you what they look like when they came out. So you can see that they are just beautiful and crispy on the outside, tender in the middle, and yummy. So we're going to make a sauce to decorate them with and make them really pretty. So I'm going to do a quick sour cream, which, yes, you can make plant-based sour cream. And this is so good that when I made it on the 4th of July weekend and had my nephew taste it, I didn't even tell him what it was. I said, will you just taste this and tell me what you think? And he tasted it and said, that is really good sour cream. So, and he's not even plant-based, so you know it's good. Okay, so we're going to start with 1 1/3 cups of cashews. And these are just whole cashews that I boiled for about 10 minutes. And then put those in the blender. Lost one somewhere under there. There it is. Okay. And then 2/3 of a cup of some plant-based yogurt. And this is just an unflavored, unsweetened, so you definitely don't want to use vanilla yogurt. So it's just a plant-based, this is a soy yogurt that I made myself, that doesn't have any sweetener, doesn't have any flavoring. And so that's 2/3 of a cup. Get it all out of there. Okay. And then to give it kind of that sour flavor that you want in sour cream, I have 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, which is about half of a lemon. And I have 2 tablespoons of plain white vinegar. And then just a pinch of sea salt. And if you can leave that out. If you're using salt, remember, I think Cody mentioned it earlier, make sure you're using iodized sea salt. Iodine is a very essential nutrient. So just a pinch of iodized sea salt. And then we have water too, and we'll add a little bit, maybe just a few splashes of water, but we'll see how thick it comes out. So you do want it nice and thick. Stop and scrape it down a couple of times. We just want it really, really creamy, like sour cream. So the more you whirl it up, the creamier it's going to get. Oh yeah, that looks really creamy. Okay, so now the fun part, we'll get to decorate our little potatoes here. So that's nice and smooth and creamy. And it smells like sour cream. Very weird how this comes out, but it tastes just like regular sour cream you might be used to, but doesn't have any cholesterol. Yay. All right, so we're going to take a little spoonful of that and dollop it on the potatoes. I think you could also really play with these potatoes and maybe put some sort of breadcrumbs down inside, or, you know, there's a lot of different ways you could fill these and make them just really yummy. But they're also really pretty for maybe Thanksgiving. Okay, and we'll just decorate them with a few little green onions sprinkled on top. Oh my goodness, look at that. That is so pretty. So, oh my goodness, that's just beautiful, isn't it? So just gonna go that way with it. There we go. Yeah, that looks so good. Yum, yum, yum. And they just have this neat little accordion look to them. Oh my goodness. And then So I have to be honest, my husband and I ate one a few minutes ago to see how it came out. And the outsides were crispy and the insides were tender. And we kind of pulled them apart like, potato chips, I guess. And it was so good, just delicious. So I hope you do give it a try at home. And it would be really nice, I think, for some sort of potluck or for, a holiday meal or something, because they're just so pretty and festive looking. So if you have any questions, now is the time to start asking questions during our Q&A, because we're about to have Q&A, and we're giving away a couple things. We have a potato ricer, and we have a subscription to a magazine, a vegan magazine. So be sure during the Q&A is when you ask your questions to be entered in the drawing. So I'm looking forward to hearing all your questions, and we'll send it over to Dilip for Q&A.
Okay, let's bring, that was great, Carolyn. I always enjoy your presentations. There's a lot of dialogue that came up that we'll discuss in a minute. And there's Nancy. Thanks, Nancy. Always love your presentations as well. And of course, Suzanne. I was so lucky I got to work with Suzanne in person recently. That was so fun working with you. And thanks, Judith, for all your comments. So let's get going with lots of good dialogue. A lot of things came up, and I think we have good. I have a number of questions of my own. Getting back first to oh, and here's sorry, I wasn't able to join Melissa. There's Melissa. Welcome, Melissa.
Oh.
Hi. We're just starting, so we just got you back on. First of all, I wanted to apologize. We were getting some reports that some of the much of the show was a little bit blurred. I hope that it's quite visible now and there's no problem. So if anybody wants to make a comment about how the broadcast was, I don't think it was up to our normal standards, and that was beyond our control. The internet is the internet. It's just what it is, and we work with it. So I hope it was suitable, and I hope it's improved. I don't know what changed. I'm getting little notices here about the internet connection, and for a while it was saying it was low. I'm not sure why. So from this point on, we'll be taking, we've loved all the questions that have come in, but anybody who asks from now on, we'll write your name down. Karen can't join us right after her show. She had to run because she's double booked. She's actually doing I think it's a raw foods presentation. I think this is the first Q&A she's ever missed. So I will be taking names, and then we'll be drawing. Our two prizes are a wonderful, I think it's a 15-ounce potato ricer, and it's a high quality one, which I'm looking forward to giving away. In fact, I'm thinking I should buy one too. I've never had a potato ricer. And the second one is a subscription to Vegetarian Resource Group's vegan journal. So I had a couple of questions, but I see questions are coming in. Let's take a couple of these, and then let's see. First of all, Judith, lots of ideas for your meals. Thanks so much, Judith. We always enjoy your watching. And then Susanna, of course, is with us. She made a Hasselback butternut squash for Thanksgiving. I have to say, I have this device, which I haven't used in years, but it's this old, cheap plastic electronic device, which I've had for decades. And it actually cuts potatoes a little bit like you did. And I used to slather on a lot of Earth Balance on it and bake it. And you gave me the idea I can use, what was it? Cornstarch, right? And that's a cool idea. So the first question that came in is from Bonnie, and I'll write her name down. I'll put the number 1, Bonnie, because when we do a random number drawing, you'll be number 1. Can you substitute red potatoes for recipes that require more hearty types of potatoes, like the potato salads? Absolutely. So potatoes you choose based on their starch content. And I talked about it a little bit in my section. It's also in my part of the recipe book, but they cook differently depending on the starch content. But if you like the taste of one, you can use it in anything. Can you boil a russet potato? Yeah. It wouldn't taste as good as boiling, say, a medium starch potato like a Yukon Gold, or a low starch potato like a red potato, but you can do that. And so these are just guidelines, but suit your own palate. So yeah, absolutely. If you like red potatoes, Bonnie, then red potatoes it is. Let's see. Here's a question from Patricia. My question is for Dilip. That's me. Early on, you talked about the differences with potatoes and what to do with them. What are best for what? Okay, and I guess I just answered that, but I'm glad you asked that. Let me put your name down. So generally, potatoes are described based on their starch content. If you really like baking, then you may want to buy, probably the most common ones are russets or Idaho. So Yukon Golds bake okay. but I prefer Yukon Golds for mashing or boiling. I don't generally like russets for boiling, but I've done it. So if I'm making a dish and I want to add some extra heft to it, I'm thinking, what else can I add to this? Sometimes I just did this like day before yesterday. I'll dice a potato, any kind of potato, russet or red, any kind, whatever I have. I usually have a bunch of different kinds, and I'll chop it and throw it in some boiling water. And if I chop it fine enough, 5 minutes later, I have a nice extra heft. So if you're a purist, and I'm going to defer to anybody else, maybe Melissa, would you like to, because in your dish, it was really important with your crock pot. Would you like to talk a little bit, Melissa, about your view about the different kinds of potatoes and how important that might be?
About the red potatoes, I almost always use red potatoes when I make potato salad. I don't know, that must have been what my mom used or something. I really like red potatoes for potato salad. In my dish, I was thinking, someone said you can use sweet potatoes. I was wondering if my dish would even work with sweet potatoes, but I just used regular. Oh no, I use the gold. I have russets often for that one. They're cooking in a tomatoey veggie broth. I haven't used potatoes in that recipe. I certainly I use all the kinds of potatoes as well as Philip, but I like red for potato salad. I like russets for baking. I use yellow for the Hasselback, and I just happen to use yellow for this pizza potatoes. But the yellow or the russet, I think, really work equally as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa. And while you're on camera, let me ask you a question. I had a question about your presentation. First of all, what a great idea. I learned so much from you and everybody else. You guys are so inventive because everybody loves pizza and you combined it with potatoes. What a cool idea. One thing, so I just came back from DC. None of you were there for I wasn't actually there for our conference, the Physicians Committee conference, but I was there just before the conference. And there's a pizza place there that I like called Pizza Paradiso. And one of their toppings is potatoes. And they put potatoes on the pizza, which is really quite good. So, but I hadn't thought about doing what you did, Melissa, which was really cool. And the question I have for you is when you cook the potato and you crock pot cook it, the dish sometimes can be, I would think, would be kind of mushy. How do you add a little crunch or a little bit more of texture? Do you undercook the potatoes a little bit or what do you do? Or does it not matter?
Okay, what I think after making it again, I hadn't made these for a while, but I think I would use less of the pizza sauce or marinara or whatever kind of pasta sauce you're going to use. I would use less of that. The photo that I had shows it more like almost like a strata, and I think that would be better than mine is almost, it came out a little bit soupy. And the one that I did on camera where I was layering up in the casserole dish that came out and it was a little bit drier and crunchier, a little bit crunchier on top. You could, if you're doing it in the oven, you
want to do smoked paprika.
Drier and crunchier, a little bit crunchier on top. You could, if you're doing it in the oven,
you want to do smoked paprika.
Okay, thanks. There was a question. So Kathy, turn this into a question, and you can be in the offing for our prizes. I'll bet that cornstarch slurry would be good on potato peels to make a crunchy topping. I agree. So please turn that into a question. And then, and I apologize. I think you're a friend of Susanna's, and I may be mispronouncing it. Aliri? What a pretty name. Alir? However it is, I apologize. Susanna, how do you pronounce Miss Lincoln's name?
It's Ellery.
Ellery.
Yes.
Ellery. What a gorgeous name.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see the playback.
Sweet person.
The last recipe looks delicious. So, Ellery, if you could turn that into a question, you'll be in the drawing for. I wonder if you're new to our show. I don't remember seeing you before. So, welcome, whether you're new or not. And please ask a question, then you can possibly win one of our prizes. You're quite welcome. Please, I hope you come up with a question. Valerie Davis, I'm going to write your name down as our third questioner. So, sounds like we're suspects in a crime. We're being questioned. I'm kidding. So Valerie Davis, could you use sweet potatoes for potato salad? And so generally, I mean, we didn't talk about the nutrition of sweet potatoes. And I think somebody did talk about how sometimes, I think it may have been Nancy, that the potatoes are maligned. Potatoes are really healthy. And I'll let somebody else talk a little bit about carbohydrates and why carbohydrates are important, because I know somebody had asked about that. So potatoes are healthy. They're great foods. And I talked about some of the benefits, all the micronutrients. And we can talk in a minute about nightshade. There are some people who have irritable bowel syndrome where their healthcare provider says, be careful with nightshades and look for a low FODMAP diet. And we can talk about that in a few minutes. And those people, if that's what your healthcare provider says, then you probably want to avoid not just potatoes, but also tomatoes and bell peppers and a few other foods. My view, and of course, do what your healthcare provider says, is plant-based eating is so healthful and so anti-inflammatory. And from what I've seen, there's not that much. There is some evidence, but it's not well founded. And this is just me speaking. I'm not well tutored on this. Somebody else can certainly step in. That in terms of nightshade vegetables really causing inflammation, it might for you, if your healthcare provider says for you, you shouldn't eat nightshades. But we can pick up on that in a few minutes. I suspect Nancy's going to be the best person to talk about the medical aspects of this. But sweet as healthy as potatoes are, sweet potatoes are even healthier. And we intend to have a show soon about sweet potatoes. We haven't decided our November show. Maybe that should be the show, although we usually do a Thanksgiving show in November. But yeah, I don't know if Nancy, you want to pitch in about this because you also made a potato salad. But from my point of view, my potato salad would have been good. Not as good from a taste point of view, I think, with regular potatoes, but would have been good using sweet potatoes. If you use sweet potatoes, I would encourage you to also put a little bit of cinnamon. I think cinnamon would go really well with that. Nancy, did you want to add your thoughts about using sweet potatoes in the potato salad?
I would agree, Dilip. I would be inclined. I used salad potatoes, which are small baby potatoes, waxy potatoes. I have to say I've never made potato salad with sweet potatoes because it just I get I feel that the sweet potato is just a bit too soft and doesn't have the bite to it in a potato salad. But honestly, anything goes. If somebody wants to try it, go for it and see what you think. Sweet potatoes are very good for you. So, but I've never made it with sweet potatoes because I like a bit of bite. I like a waxy potato in my potato salad, something to bite into. And I will just quickly say, Dilip, because I don't know if you're following the YouTube comments, but Kathy Sabo has asked a question. So we can look at that in a minute.
Okay, let's take, and again, I have a bad memory. So, Susanna, your friend, is it Alir? Alir, I believe, right?
Ellery.
Ellery. I'm going to write
Yes.
down Ellery. I'm sorry. Ellery. Okay, so Ellery has a great question. I fell off the wagon and am adding back in vegan processed foods. How long does it take to feel better when transferring back to plant-based unprocessed? It's a great question. I don't want to speak for anybody else but myself. I'm 100% vegan all the time, morning, noon, night when I'm sleeping. I'm 100% vegan, as close as I can be. I mean, I always check. I guess I should say I'm 99.999%. If you're eating out and you try your best, maybe accidentally there's some cross contamination. But as far as I can control, I'm 100% vegan. I'm not 100% unprocessed. I do eat a little bit of processed foods once in a while. And so we do promote unprocessed foods, and that's primarily what I eat. Now, for people who are having problems with diabetes, cancer, blood pressure, they need to be much more careful than perhaps I am. So I do eat some, like in my refrigerator, I like to make my own vegan cheese. I use it occasionally. And today I had, with lunch, my daughter wanted some tacos, and I put some purchased cheese in, just a little bit vegan cheese. And I made 2 tacos for myself, and I didn't put any vegan cheese in one, and I put just a tiny bit in the other. And so to answer your question, if you are getting back to totally unprocessed and you've been feeling bad with the processed, everybody's different, but I would say give yourself at least 2 weeks. That's about the magic number for the tongue to change and to give your body a chance. Now, some people, and I want somebody else to step in, some people who go from eating meat to whole food plant-based, they claim to overnight be feeling better. In terms of already going from vegan, let's say vegan heavily processed, like you're eating all these vegan cheeseburgers and chili fries and French fries all the time, to stopping that, I think you'll start feeling something much sooner. Who wants to add to that comment?
I can talk about that. I've had several people tell me that within just a few days, they feel better switching from a heavily meat-based diet to a whole food plant-based diet. But one of the things that the evidence says is that it takes about 21 days for things like cravings to go away. So if you're having cravings for animal-based products, it's going to take about 21 days, which is why the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has a 21-day kickstart. There's a lot of science behind that. One of the things that they're currently thinking is that gut and brain connection, so your microbiome, it's going to take a while to let the unhealthy gut bacteria die off and really get the healthier gut bacteria to flourish. And interestingly, that takes about 21 days. So that's probably one of the reasons why usually we say 21 days. We have a 21-day kickstart. Dr. Will Bolsowitz in his book, Fiber Fueled, talks about that. There's actually a new research article that just came out about that gut-brain connection and our cravings for fatty foods. And it takes about 21 days, 18 to 21 days, for the unhealthy gut bacteria to die off when you're trying to feed your gut microbiome healthier foods. Then you want to go with whole food, plant-based, low oil, a handful of nuts and seeds every day, and just drink water. You're going to get that healthier gut bacteria to flourish. But again, it takes about 21 days to kill off the bad bacteria and let the really good gut bacteria start to flourish.
And in terms of the nuts, I was actually on a call about this yesterday. There is some variance of opinion. So in Food for Life, and a little later we can tell you more about the Food for Life program. We don't really use nuts very much at all, and we talk about if you're using them, don't snack on them. But I've heard other people like Jeff Novick in Florida, who's a well-known nutritionist, who talks about this: a small handful of nuts a day. You could choose to eat. But there is a little bit of controversy there. And if you're a heart patient and you're following people like Caldwell Esselstyn, he'll say 0 nuts.
Right.
That the health benefits of nuts, of some nuts like walnuts, are offset. You can get these in other places. So I think that, as with all these things, the nutrition evidence is evolving. Kathy has a question, and Nancy, is this the question you were referring to? Kathy Sabo's
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Why do you boil the cashews, speaking of nuts, when you use them to make sauces? What does boiling do to them to make simple raw cashews don't have? And I'll tell you this, because my daughter, who's a kid in the kitchen, she sometimes makes recipes that include nuts. And I like to make up my own recipes. She does too, but she often starts with a strong base of an existing recipe, and she'll look at her cookbook and she'll say it says soak the nuts in hot water. And when I'm following a recipe, and if I'm kind of running late, I skip that, and I haven't noticed any big differences. I know hydrating the nuts. There's a woman from Illinois. She has these two restaurants called Karen. Can't remember her last name. Karen Cooks Raw or something like that. I've eaten at her raw and her not raw restaurant, and she has a book about soaking nuts. From my point of view, I haven't noticed a difference. I know that a lot of people recommend it. Does anybody, if you guys have an opinion or want to talk about why soaking nuts may be beneficial? I can talk about almonds, but in general.
Yes, cashews. So the reason is that when you soak it overnight, you could do that. You could just soak them overnight. They soak up the water, so it makes them plumper and easier to blend. And if you don't have a high-speed blender like a Blendtec or a Vitamix, that's a kind of necessary step. So most of us Food for Life instructors actually have Vitamixes, and you don't need to do that. But if you don't have one of those, high-speed blenders, then boiling them. So I boil them because it's much faster than soaking them overnight. And if I forget to soak them overnight, then I just boil them for 10 minutes. And it does about the same thing, but there's really no reason to have to do that. If you have a Blendtec or a Vitamix, you don't have to do that step, and you probably won't notice a difference. But
I didn't even know that. So, we do use, many of us, maybe all of us, have these wonderful blenders. They're expensive, but they're awesome. I love my Vitamix. I have 2. I used to have 3 Vitamix blenders, but you don't need them for the kind of cooking we're talking about. You can get away with a $25 blender, but I will tell you that an expensive blender like a Vitamix or a Blendtec will last for a long time. I know Vitamix stands behind their product. I've been on the, I've talked to their customer support a number of times, and they're excellent. If you buy a $25 blender, it might do well for a few years, but maybe eventually it becomes landfill and you have to buy another one. So, but certainly an inexpensive blender is all you need. I do recommend, if you're doing a lot of cooking, that you do invest in a more expensive blender. But I didn't know that one thing that doesn't happen if you don't have a high speed blender is it avoids, and that's why it doesn't really affect my soaking. Nancy has a question, and thanks for asking. I've added you to the list. What is your favorite potato? Let's see. Susanna hasn't said so much recently, so Susanna, why don't you share? Why don't we all share what our favorite potato is?
Okay, well, I don't have one. I have two. And one is the Japanese sweet potato. So that is one that has a purple kind of skin and it's white inside. And then I love the gold potatoes. I will, if I'm hungry, I'll just cook a couple and that will be a great snack for me. So I have two favorites.
Melissa, what's your favorite potato?
I really have to say the Yukon Gold too. I love the Japanese sweet potato. That's just they're just such apples and oranges, but I love them for mashing. I love that you can keep the skins on. I do the Hasselbacks. I just find that for me, I feel like they're the most versatile and overall enjoying potato. But yeah, if I could only buy one, that would be it.
Nancy, what do you think? That side of the pond, what's your favorite?
We have different potatoes in England, so I won't give any names because it wouldn't mean anything, but I love a good baked potato. Put a bit of black bean chili in it. Absolutely delicious.
Carolyn, what's your favorite potato?
I have two as well, and I'm going to have to repeat that. Japanese sweet potatoes, which you can see are purple. They're purple on the outside, white on the inside, and I actually make frosting out of them. So they're so good. You can cook it in the Instant Pot, and they get all really soft, and then you just whip it all up with a little maple syrup and a little lemon juice, and it's like cream cheese. It's so good. And I put it on brownies. I mean, it's delicious. But I also love, as far as white potatoes, I do love the Yukon Gold. I don't know. There's something about them. They're creamy. They're versatile. But I have to say, going back to an earlier question, I've made potato salad out of sweet potatoes too. And the way you keep it from getting mushy is you just roast the little pieces of sweet potato and then they stay firmer and then toss it with everything. So I've made, sweet potato salad before, which is delicious.
So I don't count sweet potato as a potato. I love Japanese sweet potato. In terms of sweet potatoes, they're my favorite. They're just so good. They taste, and they're grown locally. They grow here in North Carolina. I don't know why they're called Japanese. Maybe they originally came from Japan. Melissa spent a lot of time in Japan. She may know. But their taste, they just taste so creamy, so sweet. But in terms of potatoes, it's hard for me to find a potato I don't like. I love fingerlings. Fingerlings are small and they bake well, they boil well. They're tasty. They're tiny, so you can mix them with other ingredients and you get a little bit of the potato, a little bit of something else without too much chopping. And Cody demonstrated fingerling potatoes today. I don't know why my family, especially my daughter, they don't like fingerling potatoes, so I don't buy them often because I'm cooking for my family. But if it were me, I would buy fingerlings a lot more often. I love Yukon Golds. I'm finding more and more, and somebody asked the question, Kathy Sabo asked the question, is a yellow potato and a Yukon Gold potato? Usually, sometimes yellow potato is a little bit bigger, but generally a yellow potato and Yukon Gold are the same. And if anybody has any different information, go ahead and pitch in. And then there's nothing that beats, like tomorrow I'm going to be teaching online children. I love working with children. For a 2-hour class from 12:30 to 2:30. And what I usually do on Sundays is I put in my pressure cooker, I put usually a russet potato in, and I just say pressure steam, depending on the size, for 12 to 18 minutes. And then after my class, I just open it up and, I have this wonderful baked potato made in the Instant Pot. And there's nothing like a wonderful russet. So I love all kinds of potatoes. I love color. Purple's my favorite color. However, I don't care for purple potatoes. They're okay. And blue potatoes, they're okay. I love the color. I use it for decorating my plate. But in terms of taste, it's not my favorite. Thanks so much, Hyacinth. Change that into a question and you can be in the drawing. Now, Judith asks an interesting question. being a vegan, how do you know you're getting all the nutrition that your body needs? I'm a vegetarian. I don't always eat fish or cheese all the time. I just sometimes feel that I need it. So, Susanna, do you want to take this question? And I'll write Judith's name down as asking a question. So, Susanna. And Susanna, you're muted.
All right. So my answer is, I guess I pay attention to when I go to the doctor, and get blood work done. I do take vitamin B12 because that is an essential vitamin that our body needs, and it's water soluble. So vegan or non-vegan, everybody should take B12 because it's good. It's an essential vitamin. I have my vitamin D levels checked, other things. And when the doctor tells me that everything looks good and I'm not, needing any other type of supplement, that is what, I kind of go by. I know as I'm getting older, I have added a few other supplements. DHA, Dr. Furman talks a little bit about DHA and the importance of that. So I have added a few of those things on his recommendations, and he has a really great multivitamin for women. But, again, the best thing I can do is talk to your doctor, have them check your blood work, and, with that, make recommendations. And then how do you feel? That's a big way to kind of assess that. And I'm sure someone else may have some other ideas.
I'm going to throw a quick thing in, then maybe Nancy or anybody else who wants to say something. So, nutrition is a young and evolving science, and there's people who promote all sorts of diets. But I would say that if you get a chance, go to PubMed. I think it's pubmed.gov, and do a search, and you're going to see lots and lots and lots of articles talking about the benefits of plant-based eating. Go to your favorite bookstore, and you're going to see the section on vegan, whole food, plant-based diets, very extensive. You'll also find diets suggesting other things. But what I would recommend is look at the references, look at the number of people recommending this. In the plant-based world, there's so many conferences where, I mean, it sounds miraculous. There's evidence, and we teach it, that it can help manage or even reverse diabetes, blood pressure. Did you know that people who have heart disease, the only approach that's ever been shown to not just stop but reverse heart disease is Dean Ornish's plan for heart disease, and that involves moderate exercise if approved by your healthcare provider, a plant-based diet, it's moderate fat, low fat, low to moderate fat, and centering, meditation, prayer, something to something of that effect. And
And sleep.
I think it's
And
that's not
sleep,
part of his
Dylan.
plan, but yeah, that is an important
Yes,
thing, right?
it is. Read his book. Yes, it is, Dylan.
You wouldn't believe how early
He's
I was
all
up
about
this morning. You wouldn't believe how early I was up. I was teaching little kids this morning, too early. And there's all these studies, long studies in terms of longevity. So you have the research on your side in terms of eating fully plant-based. And I would say we can't tell you what to do one-on-one. You need to talk to your healthcare provider. But I would say there's tons of research that the best thing that you can do for your health is to be fully plant-based. And if you're thinking, well, I'm going plant-based, but to be sure, I'm going to eat a little bit of fish or a little bit of eggs, a little bit of dairy, talk to your healthcare provider. But I would suggest, no, the best thing one can generally do is to be fully plant-based. The research supports that. Does anybody else want to say something? Because we have several more questions I want to get to. Does anybody share something that, yeah, Nancy?
One thing I would say quickly is if somebody is vegetarian and wants to be sure that they're getting all the nutrients in a vegan diet, probably one of the best ways to start is to follow something like the Physicians Committee 21-day Kickstart, because it's created by dietitians to make sure that it is balanced and has all the nutrients that a person needs. And that after 21 days will give a guide to the person following it of what types of food to eat. So I think it's always a good place to start is a carefully developed 21-day kickstart that has all the nutrients, because the two main nutrients I would say that are key are vitamin B12, because you don't want to find out 10 years down the road that you've been vitamin B12 deficient, because it can have serious repercussions. And the other one, especially for women and postmenopausal women, is calcium. You want to have a diet that has a very good source of calcium. And one last thing quickly is I would suggest not making life hard for yourself or for oneself. So for example, before I went plant-based, I probably got a lot of my calcium and some of my iodine from dairy milk. Well, for the past 5 years, I've been fully plant-based, so I get that from plant-based milk. I haven't, reinvented the wheel. I've just gone to what I know, but I have supplemented plant milk. So it's just a matter of making it easy for yourself. But yes, that's all.
Lots of great questions coming in. I'll quickly answer this. Hyacinth Henry, and I will add your name down, Hyacinth, in the drawing. We have 9 people in the drawing, which is excellent. So Hyacinth, and I hope I'm pronouncing it because there's also an E there, Hyacinth Henry. Doesn't matter if you eat your potatoes. Potatoes are very healthy, and it doesn't matter if there is good nutrition in the skins. If it's not an organic potato, I would peel it. I would compost the skins or discard the skins. But if you're eating organic, which is what I do, then I would keep the skins on. Yep, beans and greens are high in calcium. I wanted to come to Sherry Sargent's question. I've added you, Sherry, as the 8th questioner. How do you increase protein? Now, again, you need to talk to your healthcare provider to see what's the right thing to eat, a plant-based, a dietitian and nutritionist. And there is a website, maybe one of you can post it. I think it's called plantbaseddocs.com. And I will say this, I can't recommend anything for Sherry Sargent. I'm not seeing you clinically or anything. But in general, Americans get too much protein. And too much protein causes problems with the kidneys. Next time you see your doctor, ask them, when's the last time you saw a patient that had, didn't have enough protein? And they'll probably say, we haven't in years and years and years. Oh yeah, there was the wino who came in who's drunk all the time and occasionally eats French fries. They were protein deficient, but they're deficient in many other things. So I'll continue to answer that, Sherry, that if for whatever reason you still think you do need to have more protein, almost every plant-based food I can think of has protein. Those foods that have more protein would be foods like tofu, beans, various legumes, tempeh. Seitan is a decent source of protein. So, and if you are, for whatever reason, trying to get even higher levels of protein, there are protein shakes, which I don't recommend generally. Carolyn wants to say something.
Yeah, I have a way for you to calculate how much protein your body actually needs. And it's very much dependent on your weight and how physically active you are. But as a general rule, you want to take your ideal body weight. So if you are overweight by 50 pounds, do not put your current weight in. Put your ideal body weight for your height. And there's all kinds of websites that you can find what is the right BMI for somebody who is 5'2" or 5'4". So when you know what your ideal body weight is, you multiply that by 0.36. And that should give you how many grams of protein you need a day. It is way less than you would expect. And so for the average person who weighs, maybe a man who weighs 150 pounds, that would be 54 grams of protein. It's extremely easy to get that much protein. And as Dilip said, most Americans eat way too much protein. And so when I went...
Most vegans, non-vegans, vegetarians, carnivores.
And everybody gets enough protein. We do not have hospitals filled with protein deficient people in the United States. What we do have is hospitals filled with people who don't have enough fiber because they have colon cancer. And so you get plenty of protein on a plant-based diet. So I didn't become a fitness instructor teaching strength training classes until after I became plant-based. So the average woman probably needs about 45 to 46 grams of protein a day. The average man, maybe 10 more grams than that. But that also, like I said, depends on how much exercise you're getting. So if you are super active, super fit, you're lifting weights all day, then you might want to increase that by 4 or 5 grams. That's not much. If you've also had surgery that cut through muscle and you have to repair muscle, then during that healing process, you may want to increase protein a little bit, but we're not talking like doubling it. Just a few more grams, like maybe 4 or 5 more grams a day. But you get so much protein from grains. Even have a lot of protein, like millet has a super high amount of protein. Broccoli has a lot of protein. All fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans have protein. Even fruit, yes, has some protein. Apples have like a half a gram of protein. It's not, fruit is not, super high in protein, but vegetables, beans, and grains have a lot of protein. And if you are eating, as Dr. Greger always recommends, 3 servings of beans in some form every day, you're getting enough protein. I teach strength training classes, and I've got way bigger muscles than I had when I wasn't plant-based. So.
Just a couple quick comments about that. So I was once attending a panel. I don't know if you've heard of the Vegan Cruise. It's holistic health holiday at sea. And there was a panel, and there were these very high performance athletes, people who did like the Ironman, and I can't even remember what the Ironman is. It's something like you run a marathon, and then you bike like 25 miles, and then you swim a lot. Yeah, it's a tremendous. And so Michael Clapper, who's a great plant-based doctor, he asked this question. He said, I tell my patients, reduce your protein. You're eating too much protein. But he said, how about you guys, when you're such high performance athletes? And all the ones in the panel said they got plenty of protein from kale and smoothies and things like that.
Right.
There was a good question from Judith Henry. How do you start? Should one go to a nutritionist? I recommend plant-based docs. I recommend a Food for Life class, fflclasses.org. I recommend any number of books by Neil Barnard, who founded the Physicians Committee. Brenda Davis is my favorite nutritionist. There's wonderful resources out there. We publish our recipes every month, so we're a great place, I think, to start as well. 21-day kickstart.
PCRM has
PCRM.org.
a whole list of plant-based doctors and nutritionists that if you just go to PCRM and search, you'll find a whole list. You can search by every state, and you'll find a plant-based dietitian or nutritionist in your area.
Okay, so that was a good question, Judith. I think we've covered all the questions. Kathy mentioned Caldwell Esselstein's awesome. If there's a question that came up in the Q&A that we haven't covered, I want to make sure anybody who's asked is in the drawing. So Carolyn, your wonderful mother hasn't asked anything. She praised you while you were cooking, Mrs. May. Susan Hansen. I knew there was one that's missing, and I'm going to write Susan, your name down, our 10th person. So Susan asked, and I had a question about this too, Susan Hansen, about why do you poke holes before baking them to let them cook faster? In fact, in the old days, we used to put nails that were specifically for baking into the baking into the potato so that it would heat up and cook from inside out. And so that's one reason. Does anybody else want to share about poking holes in potatoes before baking them?
I just cut mine in little slices.
So I don't know. My grandmother always did it growing up. And I just thought it's kind of to release some of the pressure. I don't know if they would really explode. But she just always did it. And you can see some of the juices coming out. I don't know. You would think it would dry them out, but they really don't. It's just something I've always done. So I always poke. My grandmother would wash them, and she'd let me poke them with the fork. So.
There we go. So let's see. Larry says, I have blew up a potato in the microwave.
There you go. Yeah.
So let's do the drawing. We have 2 wonderful prizes. We have a potato ricer, which looks really good. There's a potato ricer. Wonderful.
I've got Dilip, when you're done, I will share some of the great things I do other than ricing potatoes with mine.
Okay, good. And so I have 10 people on my list. This time Karen, as I said, is cooking. She's not joining us. So I'll be doing she'll still send you the prize on Monday, I guess, but I'll report her the winners. I have on my list, Bonnie is the first person, and we'll do a random number from 1 to 10. So if it's 1, Bonnie will be the winner. 2 is Patricia. It's hard to read my writing. 3 is Valerie. 4 is Elare. 5 is Kathy. 6 is Nancy Morris. 7 is Judith Henry. 8 is Sherry Sargent. 9 is Hyacinth. And 10 is Susan Hansen. So if I forgot anybody, please let us know. I think that's the list. And what I always do, I use something called random.org. and I do a dry run. I'm going to do a random number from 1 to 10, and I'll say the winner is, say it's whatever it is, and I'll say that would have been the winner, and just as a dry run, but that's not the real winner. And then I'll do this twice. So let's see, Melissa, what should we do first? Should we do the Potato Ricer or the Vegetarian Resource Group magazine?
I'll say the magazine.
So I love Vegetarian Resource Group. They're it's run by a couple, Charles and Deborah. I've known them for decades. I think Charles and I look slightly similar. I'm not sure why. If you look at the magazine, tell me if you disagree. They're great people, down to earth. Their magazine is matter of fact. It's good. It's no fluff. It's wonderful, and it's kind of every other month. And I highly recommend the magazine. And they'll happily send you a year's worth of the magazine. So I'm going to generate a random number. This person doesn't really win, but it is 10. So if this really counted, then the winner would have been Susan Hansen. And then I draw a second time, and the same person can't win twice. So if I drew a 10, Susan won, and I drew a 10 again, she wouldn't win the second time. We would keep drawing. Okay? So that's how we do it. So let me draw a number from 1 to 10. And once your number is called, I'm going to ask you to acknowledge it here. Say, yay, I won, thank you, or whatever. And then I want you to send me a note. And you might as well copy Karen if you want, or at least me. Dilip at somanycooks.com. And Karen is Karen at somanycooks.com. Maybe one of you can post that. So if you win, maybe I can actually have it here too. If you win, please send a note as soon as possible, ideally in the next few minutes. There we go. To me, to Dilip at somanycooks.com, and or to Karen, not or. So to me, and if possible to both of us. So the first winner of the magazine subscription is number 9, and number 9 is Hyacinth. So Hyacinth, you have won the magazine subscription. So please acknowledge that, Hyacinth. Okay. Hello, Sherry. So Hyacinth, please let us know that you know you've won, and you can send it to Karen at somanycooks.com, and you can send it to me, Dilip at somanycooks.com. So that's Hyacinth. So hopefully Hyacinth is with us, and we'll acknowledge that she is the winner. So we're waiting for Hyacinth, and Hyacinth, please acknowledge, and also email Dilip at somanycooks.com. And what I'm going to need to know is your address, your name, and mailing address.
Hyacinth has said yes on YouTube.
Okay, I see it. So Hyacinth, great. So please send a note to Dilip at somanycooks.com. And then let's see. The next winner is going to be the Potato Ricer. And the winner of the Potato Ricer is number 7. My list 7 says Judith Henry. So Judith Henry, congratulations. You won the Potato Ricer. So can you acknowledge that you have heard that you've won the Potato Ricer? And Judith, can you promise in the next few minutes to send a note to me, Dilip at somanycooks.com, and say I won the Potato Ricer, and we'll get it shipped to you. As I recall, you're in the Caribbean, but I think we can get it to you. Yay! Now, Judith, if it turns out we can't ship from Amazon to you, I bet we can, because I think you're in the Caribbean. If there's any issues, we will get you a substitute prize. We'll get you something, but we'll try to get you the Potato Ricer. So, Judith, will you please remember to send me a note, Dilip, D-I-L-I-P, at somanycooks.com, and let me know your mailing address. And then if there's any issue, we'll get back to you. So congratulations to both of you guys. We're a little bit over, so I want to wrap up. Did anybody want, by the way, our next show is, I think, So Many Salad Dressings. So that's coming up in October, and I think that's October 1st, and then after that, the kids will be back on, I think it's going to be October 8th, but that's not finalized for their show. Does anybody, Carolyn, Nancy, Melissa, or Susanna, want to share any last thoughts? Okay. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our show. Remember, you can see the recipes. Please download them, share them as far as you'd like. They're totally free. Contact any of us if we can help in any way. You saw something Melissa did. She's outstanding in what she does. And you say, I want to talk to Melissa. Send her a note, Melissa at somanycooks.com. Thanks so much, Patricia, for your very kind comments. And infinite love and gratitude. We missed your questions and comments, but congratulations. I agree. Congratulations, everyone. And thank you for joining us again this time. And with that, we bid you happy cooking, and we look forward to seeing you for So Many Salad Dressings. Take care. Bye.
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 So many cooks in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen with ideas we're happy to share.